Hey OutSystems developers, if you're using OutSystems 11 and want to make the most of it, this video is for you. Here are some productivity tips for using templates, forge assets, AI-assisted logic in the flows, and how to integrate high code with your OutSystems applications. Let's get started. If you are a developer, you'll feel right at home with Service Studio. You can see that right in the middle is the canvas where we're going to build our applications. Over to the left-hand side, we have a toolbar with widgets we can drag and drop. And over to the right-hand side, we have a bunch of other panels and tools that we can use. So real quick, I'm going to take you through what we call the 4 layers of OutSystems. We have some icons that run across the top right, and here you can see a layer for building business processes, managing timers. We have an interface layer that's for front end, building screens, anything visual. The logic layer, of course, would enable us an area where we can build server and client side logic as well as manage integration points here. And then finally, we have the data layer, which is to the far right up here under the layers. Now, this particular application has already been built. It's been kind of pre-built. So I'm going to go ahead and open it in the browser and let you take a look at what we've built already. Now, this is a banking application. At OutSystems, we have quite a few customers in finance because they need the stability, they need the security, and they need the high performance that OutSystems provides for them. So this is a sample demo app of maybe a banking application that runs on an iPad. And you can see very quickly here on the home screen, I can browse through some of my accounts and I can see some history here on transactions. I can navigate on over to a product screen, which will show me maybe some different offers or products that the bank has for me as a customer. Here's a different view of my accounts, and I can drill down into each one of these accounts, and I can see the income versus the expenses. So, lots of information here, typical of what you would find in a banking application that is customer facing. However, there's 2 different icons over here to the right, and these screens have not really been implemented in this application just yet. Now, one of these, it already has a front-end screen. It's a simple form, an investment calculator where I could put a monthly investment number, interest rate, and a number of years, and I could calculate that. But as you can see, the functionality has not been implemented here yet. And then I have another icon that I would like to maybe build a screen for so that I can enable my users to send money maybe to another banking customer. So let me take you back into OutSystems and I'll show you some of the productivity tools that we can use to build out these types of screens and this type of functionality very, very quickly in OutSystems. Real quick, I'm going to right click on the main flow and choose add screen. And when I do that, it's going to load a number of different screen templates that I can use for building screens in my application. Since I am working in a banking application, conveniently, I have a category over to the left that shows me some banking templates. And sure enough, I have a template that has been specifically designed for a screen that I could utilize for money transfers or sending money to different customers. Now, whenever I create this screen in OutSystems, it is very, very quick and responsive. Notice that it builds out the entire screen. I can see it over here in the interface layer. If I expand the screen, I can see all the different elements of the screens, and things look pretty good here. So I'm going to check this little anonymous checkbox, and that'll make sure that I can get to the screen without logging in. And this particular screen has some sample data that is driven into the interface. And I should be able to go ahead and publish and preview this screen immediately. So at the top, we have what's called the one-click publish button. When I click that button, OutSystems is going to build a new version of this application on the server. In the process of doing that, another notification message pops up, and it guides me over to what we call the dependencies window. And so here, once again, you can see some of this intelligence coming to the surface and guiding the developer through the process of developing and deploying the applications. And basically what the window's telling me is there's some dependencies here that either need to be added or refreshed before I can actually deploy this application. So these are powerful features which enable me as a developer to develop applications, but also deploy them without making mistakes. So really nice. I can simply refresh those dependencies, make sure that I have all of the dependencies that I need there. And then you can see down in the left-hand corner of the window, I see an error message in what we call the true change window, right? So once again, the OutSystems IDE is guiding me as a developer through the process and showing me where there may be some mistakes or issues that I need to fix, right? So I have an invalid filter there. I can simply delete that filter and then go about my business of publishing the application. Now, to kind of continue on this theme of productivity guidance, as I'm publishing the application, notice down here in the bottom left, we have another panel. We typically call it the one-click publish panel, and it's once again giving me feedback as it publishes the changes that I've made to the application. So it's right now it's storing a new version, it's generating and compiling the optimized code, any database scripts that may be necessary to preview this screen, and then it will kind of continue to give me information as it's deploying that new version of the application up to the server. At this point, it's updating the database model. And whenever the one-click publish button turns blue up at the top, then I can surely go and test this out in the browser. However, what I want to do before I test this out in the browser is I'm going to add a link down to this button at the very, very bottom. So I can double click on the bottom bar, navigate over to where I can add a link. I'll use what's called the widget tree, and we'll right click on that navigation button. All I have to do is go to link it on over to the send money screen, and then publish my changes once again. So once again, very, very easy to kind of navigate using the OutSystems IDE whenever I'm publishing. It's going to create a new version every time I publish the application, and it has built-in version control. So at any point in time, if I make a mistake and I need to roll back, I can very, very easily do that in the Service Studio environment. Once again, once I publish this, I now have a link to the icon at the bottom of the screen. I can click to open this in the browser window and test it out. There's a number of different ways in which I can view and test this on either an iPad device with different display options. I can also test it on an iPhone or a number of different views. But what I'll do is test it out in this window real quick. You can see that there are definitely some built-in validations here. Whenever I add my account number, the actual button is not active until I have a certain amount of numbers in that particular field, right? So all this is very, very nice and built right in with this particular template. So high level of productivity here. What used to take me a few hours to build out a UI screen now takes literally just a couple of minutes. Now, let's talk about a couple of these other screens real quick. I have another screen which shows me the locations of the bank, and you'll notice that this screen kind of overlays a Google map, and we have these different pinpoint locations on the Google map. Now, the good news here is that I didn't have to know anything really about JavaScript. I didn't have to be a Google map expert. All I had to do to wire this up was simply go to the OutSystems Forge and do a quick search on Google Maps. And very quickly, I could find a number of supporting components. At that point in time, you would simply, click on the component, install that component into your environment. Then you can go back into your environment and open up the Manage Dependencies windows and add that component to your application. At that point, it becomes a drag and drop widget for high productivity in the low-code platform. Now, if there comes a time in which you need some type of functionality or feature, maybe it's not right out of the box, maybe it is you can't find it on the OutSystems Forge, or maybe it's just some simple logic that you need to build into your application. There is also a way in which you can extend the OutSystems platform capabilities, right? And I'd like to kind of give you a peek at what that looks like real quick. If you have the skills and you can write .NET, C# code, then you can actually use what we call Integration Builder along with OutSystems, and you can build your own custom components. Okay, now this is a peek at Integration Builder, and you might recall just a few minutes ago I showed you this form where we want a calculation based on a monthly investment, an interest rate, and a number of years, right? So maybe I can do this faster and easier with Visual Studio and Integration Builder. So what I could do is I could right click up here, I could add an action. You can see I already have an action built. I named it Get Future Value, and that action has 3 input parameters: the investment, the rate, and the number of years. And then it has an output parameter or a return parameter of the future value, right? So to show you what that looks like, all I have to do is just open up Visual Studio, show you the coding framework of what I wrote for this. Once you have written the code, you can simply go back into Integration Builder. You can compile that code and click this one-click publish button, and that will publish this component up to the OutSystems environment that you're working in. Okay, now, once you have done that, you can simply go back into the OutSystems working environment, open up the Manage Dependencies window, and take a look. Real quick, I will find the extension that I just created with that code. I can go over here and check whatever methods or whatever functionality that I need off over here on the right-hand side. And once I click the Apply button, it will add that component into my environment so that I can drag and drop and use it just like any other first-class citizen in the OutSystems environment, right? So for my investment calculator, I already have some pre-built logic that I have ready to go here. And what I'll do is make some changes here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this connector here. I'll delete another object, and I'll kind of set myself up to add this logic to the logic flow here. Now, another productivity tool for developers, notice when I'm working in this logic flow, I can kind of click over on, or I can hover on the flow, and whenever I click on this little node, it has these AI developer-driven features that kind of once again guide me as a developer. And here it is prompting me to do one of 4 different things. It knows, based on the other patterns that I've used in the way in which I work, and some, kind of predetermined factors, this is probably a point where I want to use one of these 4 different options. So I'm going to choose add a server action. I can go ahead and take a look here in the different server action choices. If I have done my job properly, I can find the future value extension server action right here. Notice when it adds that server action, it automatically maps it to the variables here. So here's the investment, the rate, and the years. And then I can go ahead and I can reconnect this on over to the assign statement. And then finally here at the bottom, I can hover over that flow again, and it gives me another prompt. It knows that probably what I'm going to do next would be one of these 5 options. And sure enough, what I really want to do is go ahead and set a variable, and that variable is going to be the future value, the field that's going to show up on the screen whenever I run this calculation. So I'll go ahead and we'll set that value. We want to be sure to set that value to the value of the output parameter coming from that server action. And sure enough, another really nice productivity tool is I can see that it's the first option in the drop down under the assignments there. So I think that this should do the job. I will once again click the publish button. It's going to go ahead and publish this application up to the server one more time. I can take a moment as it's deploying, and I can take a look at what's going on in the one-click publish button window down at the bottom. And if all goes well, I should be able to preview this in the web browser, and then I can put in the values of the amount of money that I want to invest every month, what's going to be, the predicted interest rate on that, and then finally, what that would look like maybe over a 10-year, maybe 5-year period of time. So what I'll do is I'll refresh the application real quick. I'm going to go to my ROI calculator, and let's try it out. Let's say we just want to invest $50 at maybe a 3% interest rate over a number of 10 years. We'll run the calculation on that, and sure enough, we can see the value is around $7,004, right? So very quickly to summarize, lots of productivity tools that I showed you there in just a few minutes, templates and reusable components that you can use throughout the development lifecycle. We can bring down components from the OutSystems Forge so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And there's a lot of guidance for the developer within the IDE as I'm developing, right? And ways in which I can work that OutSystems guides me along the path of success, and it prevents me from making moves that might end up in failure or be catastrophic. And then finally, there are ways in which we can extend the platform as well. So in summary, lots of great productivity tools, but that's just the surface.
And I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and it's been helpful.